G'day my friends, welcome back to New Dollarton. In today's episode, we're going to be building a big chunk of highway stretching throughout the city and beyond, with the end goal in mind to potentially increase traffic. Yes, I did say increase. I, and probably like you guys as well, could really use a little bit more action in terms of traffic and in terms of just movement throughout the city, because we just don't really have anything. I feel like I can't see anything that's going on down here, and I think a highway getting people into the main areas, we could see a lot more going on down here, and that's exactly what I want to see. But I do also feel like in City Skylines 2, people don't always use highways, so I do have a couple of little sneaky ideas to potentially get people to use it just a little bit more. I do also have a couple of design ideas that I do want to incorporate, taking inspiration from Jersey City and all of this big old stretch that is going all around this area. I think it is super interesting, and there are some things that I definitely want to include, so that's kind of the plan with all of this. But these things are pretty destructive, so I'm kind of expecting to make a big old mess in this episode, unfortunately. This is my first idea. How many tiles do we have? 58. Oh boy, that's a lot. Sweet fancy Moses, this game does not look good when you get really far away. It's like my biggest gripe. I've got a lot of big gripes. I feel like I say that every episode, but yeah, I got some gripes. You know, we've actually got some spare tiles. I'm just gonna drag some of these. Wasn't my total intention, but look at that. 53, you little ripper. I'm gonna save a couple just in case, because I reckon we might need them. We'll just purchase that. Because I do think the key to getting people to actually use this highway is to connect it up to our outside connections. So that's what we've just done. We've just prepared for that. And before we start building, and I know I've been yapping on for a while, but just hear me out because I do need some advice. I'm going to dive into something, and we got some things to figure out. So this is where our version of Manhattan's going to sit. First of all, we cannot call this thing Manhattan. We got to call it something completely different, but maybe not completely different. Something that's like a nod to it, but in our own universe. Just keep in mind that this is New Dimesburg. This whole place is called New Dollarton, and we've got Pennyville over here. So I don't know. Maybe we stick with the theme of money-related names. So eventually, this is going to be the largest and most dense place on the map, but for now, it's just a couple of trees and an island, and I am going to connect it up with an underground highway. I know it's a lot of infrastructure for just a bunch of trees, but it will be an outside connection that we do not have at this moment, and I think that a lot of people will use it. And I guess on the same string of thought, I mean, how far away are we from building this place? I don't know, what do you guys reckon? Alright, so I've just spent a little bit of time just dragging out some highways that are very loose, a little bit just whatever, because I am just trying to establish these connections, just trying to make it so that we have a general idea of where some highways could potentially be and where they connect to the city, but for the general path of this, it's pretty loose, because I reckon I'm going to be terraforming so much of these areas, especially over here where we have the border and the edge of the map, which as soon as, and just between you and me, as soon as I get the ability with a mod, because it's going to be a mod, no doubt, that I can terraform all this stuff beyond the map's limits, I'm going to do it, because I think I don't like it. I'm going to change all of it. So all that sort of stuff around here, it's kind of just whatever. But we are at a point now where I think that these highways and these bridges are going to matter. So let's properly think about this, because I'm also going to make some pretty big changes to what my original plan was. We've got this massive stretch of open water, and I want to establish a highway connection between the two, so a bridge needs to stretch between the two pieces of land, and there is one bridge that does work particularly well, but I don't love the fact that, well, I love the bridge, but I don't love the fact that it's the Golden Gate Bridge. I don't love that. You know what I mean? It's so perfect, but then so not perfect. If I could change the color of it, then it would be perfect. But I am stuck with just the Golden Gate Bridge colors. and I don't know if I love it. But then I kind of do. What do you reckon? Alright, okay. You don't need to all tell me at once. I am now fully aware that I didn't really need to buy all those map tiles. We are able to work within non-purchase tiles because I'm using Anarchy. So there's that. Oh well, bugger. Anyway, what have we done here? I have dragged out this highway and it goes to the heart of this mountain that is now kind of turning into a couple of hills, which I think is kind of nice. When we work on this area a little bit better in the future, I think that I'll probably turn this into a bit more of a valley and this will be multiple hills and a whole lot more detailed. But for now, I think it's going to work just fine doing that. And I like the fact that it does something a bit different on this side than on that side. So what I need to do is I need to connect this guy up, but I'm going to do something a bit interesting here. I'm going to go a 2-laner and we'll connect them up like this. Oh, that's pretty damn good. And that's not quite as good, but whoa, Move It has been updated. Ladies and gentlemen, don't freak out. I'm freaking out. But yeah, I'm just going to drag them a little closer. And I don't want to get too hung up because I will be changing so much of this, but just to give you a very general idea of how it will look at some stage. But yeah, there's that. I think it looks kind of interesting. But here's the thing now, I think that maybe the Golden Gate Bridge is, I mean, she might be a little bit big. I think it could be just a smidge big. So I'm just going to leave that with you. What do you think about this bridge? Do we keep it? Do we change it? Yeah, I'm not quite sure yet. We still need to work on it. But I do have a pretty good idea of what we're going to be doing down here. Just the most bare bones, but she'll do for a little while because I actually think that this highway is important to be sitting in an area like this. I'm actually thinking that the airport at some point will sit in an area like that, and I don't know, we'll know that like this is the thing that we need to fix the absolute most. Jeez, all right, we'll think about that, but that is a definite thing that we need to get into. But what I'm actually hoping is that by connecting up this point over here, we will actually see people use this way rather than using this road, because I actually think that this is going to be more useful for people who are entering into this section, this industrial area. And I also want to keep this kind of like a bit more of a rural road, but like I mentioned before, this is so temporary. I'm going to be changing all of that. But this bridge that I'm going to be building down here, I actually think I might make this the permanent bridge. In fact, all this stuff that I'm working around here will be all permanent stuff. So this is going to be my first attempt at a somewhat detailed and custom bridge. And I've got a couple of ideas, so I'm hoping I can actually make it happen. What I'm going to do is I wanted to get fairly high up because we are going to be having, that'll do. I reckon we'll have another port here. We're gonna have so many ports in this area. This is gonna be just such a bustling industrial hub. And for this part, I'm going to keep it pretty much like nothing. That it's pretty much level. I'm really just going for the general shape of this. And thankfully we now have Move It, so I can just adjust some of those nodes. But I do have an idea. I'm gonna remove this. And here I'm going to be using the 4-lane tiered arch bridge. I want to get this up to the same level, and I think what I'll do is I'll just drag it as far as I can. Whoop, I don't want it to go to 2. I want it to stay at 1. 1 arch. Sweet. And then with the power of Move It, I'm going to just make it a smidge longer, but not too much because then it gets a bit skewed. But we can go a little bit more. And that's already going to be a little bit nicer than just having a highway bridge that just stretches over there. And I suppose it is probably a little bit dangerous. I mean, it is a high-speed road and people can just wander over there, but I think it's fine. If I was going to spend a little bit more time detailing this up, which I might do at a later stage, I think I'd add some railings along here so that it was just a little bit safer for pedestrians with such high-speed vehicles screaming past. But something that is bothering me is the fact that it's just kind of flat. I think it'd be nice if it was a little bit arched in the middle. So I'm actually hoping that with Move It, where we are now able to actually raise up sections that are in the middle of a segment, hopefully I can just raise this up. Is that raising up in the middle? Oh, you little beauty. And look at the slope of that thing. Man, I love building a bridge, and I think that is actually starting to look really nice. What I do want to do though is I think that in most cases when you have bridges like this, I think that a pillar like this doesn't really match the rest of the type of style of this bridge. Type of style or architecture? I don't really know what word I should use there, but we'll stick with style. So I will swap them out for something a little bit different using Better Bulldozer. But before I do, I'm just going to extend this out. And then I think for these pillars that are sitting in the water, I think I'll make some sort of custom base for them. But I am going to use Better Bulldozer, and I can, if I select that one, yeah, great, wonderful. A couple of little details really goes a long way, and that's what I am most excited about, is just playing around with some of the tools that we have and some of the new mods that we have, and just seeing what we can get up to. I know we don't have the full catalog of what we had in City Skylines 1, but I'm really happy with some builds like this that are a little bit more simple, but I think quite effective, and I think this works really well. It's not what I envisioned, but I actually think this is going to work a little bit better. So I'm happy with that. What do you think about the 3 pillars, by the way? I don't know. Is it realistic? Who cares? I am a little bit concerned about what's going to happen when vehicles actually start to use all of this network, because that is not a very substantial bridge. So we could get a whole bunch of bottlenecks just happening at some of the ramps that are creeping up to this. So we'll have to just make sure that they are fairly effective at getting people around. But I think that is a pretty good start. And as somebody who's been giving it to City Skylines over the last couple of weeks, I have to say, I'm still so impressed by the road networks, because making interchanges and highways and even just any sort of road, I think is just, it's so powerful and so much fun. And I'm just so keen to create a whole bunch more. Even though this is super wonky and just all over the place, you know, I'm going to demolish this. But I still think that this would have taken me a really long time in City Skylines 1, whereas this is pretty easy and I'm stoked for it. Get out of here. Before I move on to our next bridge, and then we start dragging this throughout the city, I have just been playing around a bit more with our big old bridge. And I think that it's too big. It's just too big. And it's just a bit of a point of reference, that's the stock standard one, which I think I'll probably end up doing, and we'll see if we can make something a bit more custom. But no, not today. I have other things to be doing rather than making another custom bridge. It's pretty wild. You know, that's pretty wild. And I don't think it's going to look exactly like that, but I think the point of this for now is just to get an idea of whatever interchange we build down here, and then we can connect them up, and then we'll make it custom maybe next episode. Oh, I don't know. Who the hell knows, honestly. I mean, that is a pretty wild highway right there. This is all based on this guy down here, and I think you can see what I'm thinking about doing. I'm thinking about doing a truss bridge underneath it, and it'll be stretching across all this industry that's going to sit on this side of Staten Island, so that's going to be completely different to what's happening within New York City. So just like an idea of how things are going to be changing and how I'm trying to like squeeze a couple of different ideas into a different space. So you kind of get like references of what's happening in New York, but then it's also a little bit different. And that's what I like about this is, you know, you kind of do your own thing. So I think this is going to be a bit of a wild one. And I think it'll look really cool when we get everything else established down here and an airport and all that sort of stuff. But for now, it's pretty wild, just sitting there in the wild. And I think we work on some other stuff, like probably the most challenging part of this whole episode. Yeah, we've still got all that to come. And you know, in a city like this, before there was a highway, there were roads and streets and people that live down here. And I feel like I need to establish that before I can really figure out where this is going to go, because that's going to influence the way that this highway is going to snake through this area, as well as how I'm going to be kind of connecting it all up with all those off ramps and on ramps and all that sort of stuff. Now, this is definitely not perfect. In fact, I mean, even if it was perfect, it's not going to be perfect infrastructure, because we've got crossings in areas that are going to be just ultra annoying, and down here, and roads that just don't align up. This whole mess down here, I mean, it's just an absolute shamble. Kind of the point though, you know, this is like not a new neighborhood. This is something that's been here well and truly before cars were around. So, you know, this sort of like place is not really been established around cars, but a lot of these roads have been upgraded to cater for that. But I think that all of this area is going to be industrial. So I'm kind of like just leaving that open, because I think that's a story for another day. And I think all around here will probably continue to be residential, but I think that is something I'd like to flesh out a little later. But I think you can see a pretty good path of where I can drag out these highways. I think that this makes quite a lot of sense. And then we can do some sort of interchange here, and then this is gonna be, yeah. And just having a little bit of a think about this, but I am gonna change my tune. Originally I was gonna stretch alongside Cherry Street, but I think that that is probably too much road. Instead, I'm now imagining that Cherry Street was a road that used to exist as it hit up all this industry that used to sit around here. This industry still sits there, but we no longer need a dedicated street that stretches all there. Instead, we're going to convert Cherry Street into a section of the highway, and then that way we can eliminate this ugly little bit, and we can turn all this into some sort of intersection or interchange, and I think that kind of makes a bit of sense there. I've chosen to go a little bit elevated, and I think the key is to kind of follow a bit of Cherry Street, the path of it, so that it does have a bit of a nod to what it used to be like. And then we can just, I might put it on pause because I'm about to make a mess. And to see what I mean by Cherry Street, you can still kind of make out the path, and you can imagine that the industry that would sit over here has been there for a while, and Cherry Street would have been the connection from the main downtown of New Dollarton, of New Dimesburg, and then connecting up here and then to our outside connection. And then as time has passed, we now have this bridge and this highway and this other section of elevated highway, which is now serving that purpose. So it's kind of like it's been replaced, because I think that Cherry Street, Strawberry Street, that was Cherry Street before, wasn't it? Oh, City Skylines 2. That's a funny joke. I see what you did there. But I like that little path. I like that little nod to what it used to be like. And I think that's only really possible when you do have the roads first and think about how the old infrastructure used to look, and then drag out the new stuff. But man, we have made a big old mess down here. Alright, I think this is coming together pretty well. I like the path, and I feel like it's a good direction and a good nod to its source inspiration. I am not going to connect him up to this bridge today, just because this is a whole other rabbit hole and I want to do it justice. Plus, it doesn't go anywhere, it just kind of stretches off and doesn't connect to anything. But I do think it's important that we do connect this guy up so that we do have some sort of connection to our industry and to Florence and whatever this place is going to be. Well, let's just see how it performs, and I'm going to continue to add bits and pieces around it. But yeah, I think this whole area is going to be something we work on a little later, because otherwise we're not going to get to the main event, which is all of this. Alright, we have made some considerable changes, and I have changed my tune about what I want to do with this highway. It's a little bit different, so I'll talk about that. But I do have to mention that look, I'm going to be making some changes down here, and it's going to be very destructive, and I'm not getting too hung up on it because I think next episode I'm going to spend a good amount of time detailing and just making things look a whole lot better. But I think that this episode is mostly about just causing all sorts of havoc, because I think that's what you kind of have to do when you're dragging these highways. You kind of get too attached, and that's why I haven't been too attached to anything that I've really built so far in New Dimesburg, because I mean, so much is changing, and I think that's fine. So don't worry too much about how everything is looking, because it's looking kind of average, you know? Very average. Terrible, in fact. But this is not terrible. I think this is great. I have totally changed the road layout down here, and I felt like it was kind of necessary because I needed more space between our highway and our downtown. So I think that this makes a bit more sense. But if I was being ultra picky, I would probably have this thing like closer to here, but that's fine. I think that this still works. And what I'm doing is I have connected them up down here with this ramp. I did say that I wasn't going to do any sort of connection to this street because it's already a fairly busy one. But so far, so good. It kind of comes in waves, and I guess we'll just keep an eye on it. But for now, I think he's working just fine. What I will do though is I think that these streets can be upgraded. They were getting pretty clogged before, so I do think that it's necessary to do some pretty basic upgrades. I'm just gonna go ahead and make this just a solid one-way road. Yeah, all the way up into there. And then this one, same treatment. And then that's also removed the parking, which I think was kind of necessary, and we'll just keep an eye on that. But I think that's going to work out pretty well, and we might just have to upgrade a couple of these ones a little later on. But I do like the fact that we don't have every single street connecting here. I think that's important, but we'll just have to keep an eye on all of this. I don't think I'm going to do any more ramps around here, but if you've got some ideas, let me know. But over here, this is where things are really changing. So originally, I wanted to have this highway snake around all through here and then potentially go underneath these bridges and we'd connect up our little town over there. But I think we're gonna do things a bit differently. And I mean, you can really see the path we could potentially be taking down here, and I think it actually would be. It'll be really straightforward, but I think we can take a more interesting one. Instead, I'm gonna go underground. We're gonna go through here, and I'm gonna be taking more inspiration from this section of this elevated highway where it does go underground. It goes under this road, and there is a pretty cool little interaction here. I think we can do it. And I also think that it'd make a lot of sense because we could have some sort of interchange here and the highway could snake off in this direction and then it couldn't snake off in this direction and head towards Pennyville, which I think is very much appreciated. Especially with that economy update coming along, I think we'll need a far better connection to Pennyville. But then on this side, we kind of need to have that road getting to our downtown, which I think that this one is doing a fairly good job at doing, but then it's gonna have to snake off at some point and of course, get us over here. And this is already our busiest part, and even our highway, it's already a bit of a shambles. So, even after all the choices I've made down here. See what I mean? Like, I don't think we're gonna be solving any of this problem, but I do like the idea that we're gonna be seeing people up top rather than down here, at least for partial of the way. This is the road that's going to be now much larger. It's going to be actually a 4-lane road. And what I think I'm going to do, rather than going for any of these ones, I think instead I'm going to go for 2 one-way roads running side by side. And I think I'm going to have to shuffle him around. Okay, so I have decided to extend out the land up here just because I feel like we need a smidge more space for our elevated and underground section. So I am just figuring out what all of this is going to look like on this side. This train line that we're working on, this is abandoned, at least for the time being. Maybe gets repurposed into something else. And I almost connected him up to this line, but instead, I think he's gonna go over the top. Oh, good gravy. All right. We really need to think about this because I don't think Move It is working in this situation, and I don't even know if this is going to be the right answer either, this retaining wall, which I kind of like the idea that we have this railing on this side and then not on the other side, but I actually don't think this is going to work because as soon as I drag out this highway underneath, we're going to be having some clipping going on, and I don't know, I kind of like the idea that we'll be able to see the traffic underneath rather than it being inside this retaining wall. And plus, the bumpiness, not so good. So, I really need to think about this. And the moment of truth, let's drag these nodes a little bit closer and hopefully this will look okay. Ooh, let's get that close. Yeah, I'd very much like this to be much closer together. There is segments on this road that I'm taking inspiration from that do go a lot closer, and I would like that just so it's not such a mammoth bit of concrete that is sitting up here, because there's not a massive stretch, and I think that that would actually really help to create a little bit more realism, and I just think aesthetically would be kind of cool. But I am hesitant because I don't really want to be dragging out, this is what I don't want. I don't want to just compromise and go like that, because I don't know. I don't think that's gonna look very nice. So I'm gonna press undo, and I'm just gonna leave it at that, because I am also just trying very, very hard not to detail. You know, like this is not a detailing episode. I need to only drag out this highway and figure out where it's going and detailing is just gonna have to come later. But there are a couple of things I can do right now. And then we need to connect up these roads, and this will be a bit of a stretch. That one worked. But what about this messy one? I don't have high hopes. Yes. Ooh. And, well, probably not a yes. And look at that totally messy intersection that I do truly love. I love that. I love just these weird kinks in the road that you sometimes get. And yeah, it's like not perfect, but that's what I totally love. But I don't love this, but I just need to let it go. I need to work on this another time. Next episode, because I really just need to continue connecting things up. This is truly just a proof of concept, and then we can push forward, and if this is all flowing pretty well and looking kind of nice, then I'm gonna just continue and get this done. One thing I do need to do, and it's kind of ridiculous, but I'm gonna do it anyway. This just feels a smidge too tall. It's a little high. So I'm gonna bring it down just a little bit. And just in this one section, I don't mind it being tall in other areas. I don't even know if this is a good idea. It most probably is not a good idea. I'm using Move It here, and oops, come on. Just a little bit more. I feel like this is a mistake. Far out, what a mess. We are making such a mess. I was prepared for this, but seeing it all so messy, it's a little bit upsetting. This is what I want to see, just a whole bunch of people sitting in traffic, because that means I can just get in here and fix up some bits and pieces, because I can already see where we're going to have some problems. And here's the other thing, it's only going to get so much worse because we're not even connected to our outside connection, and these roads at the moment, this little stretch of highway that is heading out into the streets down here, this is going to get so much worse because this is going to be my connection over here. And I've actually kind of changed my mind about where this is going to go, so I'm going to try something in just a moment. I think it's going to fix a whole bunch of this, but I think what we're really seeing, the biggest problem, is that this is like the only way down here, unless you want to go down this route, but all these people over here, you pretty much have that option over there, or this road, and that's kind of like heading in the wrong direction. So I think that an extra road somewhere that winds its way down this little cliff face, that would be very much appreciated. I almost feel like this section could have that. Actually, you know what? Let's just bloody do it. This would be extremely underwhelming, but it's just a connection for now. I just want to see if this just solves a bit of the problem. I do plan to come back and fix all this up because it's definitely not pretty. Yeah, and already people are starting to appreciate it, so that is good. But before we get to problem solving, my aim with all of this is I really wanted to achieve this look where we have a lower section of the highway and this higher section too. And I really love that. Love seeing highways that do that. And this elevated section in Jersey City does exactly this. And I think it's just this like really quirky, interesting aspect of, you know, this particular area. And I always really love it when they do that. I don't know why. It's just maybe just like a bit interesting. It's a bit strange. I like it. So we're doing it. And I think I'm actually going to make it a little bit more pronounced. So I might even lower this section down a little bit more. And you might be wondering what's going on down here. Well, I sort of feel like I needed to make some changes with this abandoned train line anyway. Yeah, that's right. All this is abandoned. So I'm not really too worried about clearance because I feel like it doesn't really matter. But speaking of clearance, I think that for an old abandoned train line, this is like too much clearance anyway. I want to first figure out where this is going to go, and then we can worry about all that sort of stuff. And so the original plan was with these two sections, this one's already connected up to our streets down here, but this one I was going to wind around and connect up to Magnolia Street. And these two ones were going to be one-way roads, and they were going to go at this point around here, underground, underneath our lake, our big body of water, and then connect up to this outside connection. And I kind of love the fact that you can build these elevated sections over the top of these roads that are already down here. So it's a bit much, but I think I might do it. And you know, now that traffic is somewhat dispersed, maybe it's because there is a car accident on our highway, I'm gonna just make it just a whole lot worse. Okay, don't think too much about these outside connections. These highways, these little things that I've just dragged out are purely here just to get that connection going. All this is going to change completely, and these tunnels that I just created, oh man, they're bad. But what I'm actually really thinking is that this is like too small of a space to create what is like such a big piece of infrastructure. What I'm going to do at some point, and maybe next episode, maybe I'll save it for another day, but I actually reckon all of this space could be taken up with that connection, that tunnel that goes underneath, and we could even drag this out, like extend out the land a little bit more, and think a little bit better about how this bridge goes across this section, maybe even just get rid of it entirely. I don't really know. Let me know. But I think that this would be a really good space for it. Of course, it's going to be totally problematic with... well, at least it could be problematic, you know, with what is our ferry terminal. But I also think that not a huge amount of people are really using this area anyway. I mean, this is chock-a-block full of taxis and people using the train station. But I think that we can actually think of a really clever way of actually getting this working pretty smoothly. But this is purely just to see how it goes. And I'm going to make some upgrades to these roads, just so they can hold just far more people. Okay, I think this is working just fine, but I'm going to make another big change, and I'm going to remove this section and this, and I'm going to, instead of connecting it up to this street down here, I'm going to swoop him around, and he's going to connect up to Oliver Street. And at this point, I don't know if it's better. I do think that it's in a better spot. I do like that it's kind of taken up an area that would have been a little bit more vacant than an area like this, which probably, you know, like to keep it more of an old town. It's definitely that transition from the downtown where we've got a little bit more historical buildings, and then we kind of move into a bit more of an industrial zone where an interchange like this I think makes a little bit more sense. But I love this. I like that it's this big swooping turn, and then you kind of meet at this spot and you pretty much just have two lights to sit through, and then you are in the tunnel and on the other side. And when we have Manhattan over there, you can imagine this is going to get, oh boy, I think we're going to need more than 3 lanes. So I'm going to stick to it, and I think the only thing that I am kind of just like wrestling with at the moment is we don't really have any access for, basically if you're down here in the downtown and you want to leave the city via this highway, you can't really get up here. You'd have to maybe take this road, and then again, there's no way of getting onto that. So I don't know if I need to make that, but then I'm also kind of like, well, maybe just embrace it, because I do think that, oh, I guess you could probably, oh no, you still can't take that one either. Do you see what I mean? You can't get up there. So I sort of feel like we need to do it. We do need to make some sort of ramp to get up to that highway, but then I also sort of feel like maybe just take a different route, because, you know, not all interchanges cater for every single scenario, and sometimes you just kind of have to just take a new highway or take a different road. However, there is still one more thing that I need to do, and that's just fix up some of this clearance. And I think that is just about going to do it. The clearance now is pretty good. We do have a fair few pillars still clipping into some of these areas, but I am going to be detailing this up in the next episode, as well as this whole area that needs quite a lot of love now that we've really butchered all the neighborhoods and all the detail work that I did previously before mods, and even the bare bones mods that we had before. Now that we got some extra ones, I'm kind of keen to get in here and make it all look a whole lot more interesting, but I think this is working quite well. We are definitely like in the middle of the night, so we don't have as much traffic as we could potentially have, but in saying that, I mean, it's still pretty busy down here. And it's only going to get so much worse, because as soon as we start adding some density over here, and well, even just something over there, and even adding to everything else around this city, I think it's only going to get so much worse. So kind of all for it. And I also want to keep on working on the elevation of this highway, just because I feel like some improvements can be made. I'm still trying to figure out if this is going to get any higher or if this is going to get any lower. That's something I'm just going to continue to experiment with. But all through here definitely needs some changes, and I feel like this section can be much, much lower down, just because it does need to clear all of this, which I do love. I love it when you have all these multiple layers. Speaking of that, this section over here is a work in progress, but again, the 4 layers, the road, the train line, and the 2 sections of highway is just so fun. But anyway, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in to today's episode. It is always very much appreciated. And I want to give a special shout out to some of my beloved patrons supporting the channel and making videos like this possible. Emery Deju, Aldini, Maximilian, Kyle Horton, Charlie Zane, VLDC 1000, Lucky Panda, Ferg, Adam Evans, Nick Serafleen, and Damo Cooper. Cheers, legends. See you in the next one.